Hi, welcome back. Oh, welcome. If you happen to click on this video, then congratulations to me because yes, you come to the right place. Or you came to a completely wrong place. It depends on who's asking. This video is dedicated to pho. Because yes, it is important to separate the two things. There are Vietnamese restaurants that offer awesome food but serve a not so awesome bowl of pho. Some restaurants don't even have pho in the first place. Yet this bowl, as Vietnamese would call it, quốc hồn, quốc túy, the soul and the essence of the nation, undoubtedly spearheaded this cuisine into the conscience of global foodgoers. And who could ask for a better gateway than New York City? So this video will try to accomplish two things. One is to settle the confusion around the types of pho and declaring my biases, in which my taste is more responsive to. On the second part of the video, I present to you the list of top 10 Vietnamese pho in the city as of early 2025. So get your pitchfork ready. Let's go. If you just care about where to go, skip to this part of the video or part 2 of this video. But stick around. I promise the second part will make much more sense after digesting my whining. It is important to point out that there are essentially two distinctive bowls. You need to know what you're seeking for before going to a place. And yes, I apologize to my central crowd. There are Southern Pho style and there are Northern Pho style. To put in something that all of us in New York City can understand, think of Northern Pho as the original version, like Italian pizza. Pho as a commercial product is from Nam Định, a province in the north. Yes, I will get into the Chinese and the French influence in a minute, but Nam Định as a province is the origin of the bowl of pho as we know and love. Hanoi was the place that popularized the bowl and houses some of the best pho joints in the nations. Okay, so fine. Some of you like this version, some of you don't like it. Even to this day, if I go to a subreddit like that, people still fight about these two versions, and I'm just too tired of getting into this fight. 100 years from now, people will just still fight about the same thing. Northern Pho equates to like Italian pizza, Naples pizza. Southern Pho is a product in immigrations. Not the people who migrate to the States. No, this is the people from the North who migrated into the South in the 50s. This bowl had a very fascinating upcoming. Saigon has always been a melting pot of all types of culture. Saigon embraced the pho and transformed it into something more of the Southern palate that is much more flexible and creative. This is a stark contrast to a much more conservative, almost stubborn and rigid tradition in the North, even down to how they make their food. So think of Southern bowl as like New York pizza. Different from the original? Absolutely. Better than the original? Okay, now you see what the dilemma I'm facing. And even when this difference is established, even in a city like Hanoi and Saigon, people still can't even agree on which place in the city serves the best Northern Pho and where serves the best Southern style pho. You and I can't even agree on which place serves the best pizza. Usually the most reliable blind indicator of a good bowl of pho is how old a joint is. Like I would just talk blindly, for example, like for Lý Quốc Sư in Hanoi or for Cao Vân in Ho Chi Minh City. So every time if I open my mouth recommending a place or comparing a pho place being better than the other, I'll get into an argument almost immediately. I mean, that is fair now since I'm putting myself out there with this channel. Okay, touchy-feely stuff. Since most of the crowd in the US using Reddit are possibly American, and many of you are Vietnamese Americans that are statistically from Southern families who migrate to the States. So chances are you have eaten or form a very specific fond taste for Southern pho. This is not to mention that how Southern pho gets transformed and adapted in the States to a different ways of life different soil, different herbs, different meat, different water. So this changed the bowl, hence your taste even further. Recipes can cross overseas, but not the ingredients. And that's why you will see a lot more Southern pho in the States. New York City, it's not an exception. We established that there are two bowls. I can hear the central crowd screaming. I apologize. My list ranks the top pho list from someone with a northern palate, a palate for the original bowl. The list does include both bowls, but as far as you can probably sniff out by now, I would inherently favor a northern bowl over a southern bowl to a reasonable extent. Got it? If you don't like it, stop the video right here. If you're not sure yet, well, keep watching anyway. So what's this all the fuss is about? Northern, Southern, Central. They're essentially just Chinese knockoffs with a French twist anyway, right? No. Conceptually, it is very similar to a lot of meat broth soup noodles dishes across the East and Southeast Asia. China also claimed to have something similar with the use of pork bones and soy sauce. Japan has ramen to show for it with the use of pork bones, soy sauce, or fermented soybean. With Vietnam, beef didn't even exist until the French slides into the DM. It was the experiment of chicken pho, pork pho, and buffalo meat pho. And French introduced cows and subsequently dishes like the beef stew, and the idea of different doneness and different cuts to the beef. There are undoubtedly contributions from both East Asian influences to French influences, but they are just those influences. So I think it makes the most sense to start with the original bowl. Then we can start to see how the Southern adapted it and changed it, ingredient by ingredient, down to the details, nuances. Cooks and chefs will still do things slightly differently. Like they have their own tricks, secret methods, timings. So what I'm gonna build with you right now is as basic as a commercial pho will get. Not a home-cooked bowl, a commercial bowl. So let's build a bowl together. Pho has been a staple dominantly as a breakfast choice. Yes, a bowl of pho for dinner is possible, but unlikely the very best one. And this is largely driven by one of the main ingredients, the broth. This partially explains why New York City can offer any cooks a superior range of beef cuts and in arguably much larger portions, yet still manages to deliver a spectacular assembly of mediocre to downright upsetting bowls of pho. Broth is what brings a pho joint to the front of many Vietnamese minds when that big daily decision needs to be made. Where am I gonna spend that 70,000 dongs today for breakfast? It has become so critical of a factor that a dedicated cook is on a full salary, or it's the job of the joint owner himself or herself to do the broth prepping and mixing for each batch of pho. So what is broth mixing? There are two sets of broth coming together prior to the point of serving. First is a bone broth, arguably the most complicated and time-consuming broth of the two. Bones are carefully picked out at a typical ratio of 7 parts beef bones and 3 parts pork bones. Yes, I'm aware that different joints do different things, but let's stick to something for now. Beef bones shall be the ones that pack lots of marrow, usually come from tubular bones. These will produce two things: the unmistakable sweetness and a stench. The stench is dealt by rinsing with running water before the first boil, or with the help of ginger and rice wine. The 3 parts of pork bones' main purpose is to fatten the broth and introduce a substantial level of richness. The process of drawing out these profiles cannot be rushed in a commercial settings, albeit through high temperature or high pressure. Shimmering over the small wooded fire or charcoal is preferred, before the wide adaptation of commercial pots. This inadvertently prevents the bone from reaching the disintegrated level when the calcium starts to precipitate into the broth. Longer the high heat and you're approaching cooking animal glue. If you ever have a chance to walk past a good pho joint, you may have observed the cook stop prepping the batch around 3 to 4 p.m. the day before. The shimmering shall take 10 to 12 hours, given the quantity of the bones one joint has to go through a day of sales. The total prepping simply prevents the good pho joint from operating for dinner services. Their peak sales hours are in the morning and sometimes maybe lunch hours. In short, similar to dim sum historically, if you're eating a bowl of pho for dinner, good chances are you're not having a good one, or worse, a reheated one. Second, the meat broth. This takes a much simpler and less elaborate form. Meat is boiled, then shocked in ice water, then hung to dry to get ready to serving the next day. The meat is dry, stiffened, and ready to be sliced from the southern bowl with the introduction of beef balls. Bò viên. This is akin to the existence of hủ tiếu, which is something we're gonna talk much more detail later. Okay, second part, spices and sweeteners. Spices take on two important responsibilities. Historically, one is to remove the carcass stench. Ginger is the main option here, used when rinsing fresh bones and meat with running water, then used inside the first boiling process to remove impurity. The ginger is teamed up with all the spices to be part of this sachet to be used in the serving broth, aka nước lèo. Spice choices are up to the joint's discretion, but some usual suspects are ginger, onions is sliced in half and grilled over an open flame. All the spices like đại hôi, tiểu hôi, quế, thảo quả, tiêu sọ are roasted on a pan for that distinctive flavor profile. So here's what differed greatly historically. The majority of these spices originated in forested highlands or specifically taken roots in southern China and northern Vietnam. Northern got access to these more readily and it weighs more into the tradition of adding them into their pho in a desperate attempt to remove the stench altogether from the meat and to the broth. These spices make their way around the country in a much more readily fashion, even in the States. Sweetener. Giving all your trust to the bone marrow to sweeten the broth when time is not on your side is a suicide game financially. So on top of preparing the batch the night before, most joints have another weapon up their sleeves. Sá sung. These are dry earthworms that were used to sweeten the broth. Okay, I don't want to get into details since it may convince some of you to never eat pho in Vietnam ever again. Sá sung are being gradually phased out, with the exception of very, very traditional joints. Squid, most popular modern alternative to earthworms. Dried, then grill over the open flame until slightly darkened. This act alone releases a great amount of aroma. Sweetness just bleeds through the sachet. Củ cải trắng, white radish. Much more prevalent for home cooking usage since it's physically impossible to achieve somewhat remotely close to the sweetness when you can only afford to gas cook for 5 to 8 hours continuously, and that's even excessive. White radish has been known across many cuisines as the soup sweetener since a lot of Vietnamese families in the States decide to open their restaurants. This usage of radish naturally made its way into the commercial cooking, and only certain types of eater would recognize the difference. Next one, you can use broth extract. On the surface, arguably the easiest way to bypass all of this hard labor, and it makes a lot of sense for a very small joint, but on any larger scale than that, it simply does not make any sense to scale the operation this way. Third part is the use of greens and other condiments. Being a stubborn and a stiff bunch, like myself, from the north, condiments did not come easily. Fresh cut chili peppers, this is the first condiments to be introduced, as someone may opt for a spicy bowl, but that was it, nothing else at the time. Then reluctantly, limes and garlic vinegar were introduced as to alter sourness, saltiness and sweetness. or in the mercy of the joint. And frankly, if you mess that up, you should close your shop immediately. Jalapenos, Thai basil, hung chaw, bean sprouts. This is the contribution of the Southern style pho. So understand that when pho was brought into Saigon, the recipe had to adapt. The Southern region is a hot and humid climate, so put yourself in their shoes. On a hot, humid day, would I want to stuff my face with a hot and steamy bowl of Northern pho? No. To adapt somewhat to this, these herbs are added to fit a Southern palate and as a way to cool down the gut when holding down this bowl. Hoisin sauce and sriracha or hot sauce are present because of the existence of another very popular bowl in the South, hủ tiếu. Hủ tiếu is the result of a Chinese immigrant living in Saigon, bringing what is known as Kway Tiao from this region. Put these two side by side and you see another dish being transformed and adapted in the South. It is simply amazing. So hoisin and hot sauce are used to mix with the sauce for hủ tiếu, then later adapted to be used as condiment for Southern pho. Fourth item is noodles. This is the part that is easiest to discern between the two bowls, Northern bowl and Southern bowl. For the Northern pho, they shall be flat, wide cut, and most importantly, fresh. For the Southern pho, the noodles are smaller and rounder. This is akin to the noodles used in hủ tiếu. This gave lots of Vietnamese joints in New York City a license to use either dry packaged noodles. The discussion about noodles have been done exhaustively by me. Check out my top 10 video. So TLDR, after all this yapping, what do we learn? Northern pho, more emphasis on the broth being a balance between salty and a hint of sweetness, visually clear body and very heavy-handed in the use of spices. Southern pho tend to be on the sweeter side of the broth and pay less importance on keeping the broth clear, very fatty, very rewarding, and arguably less salty than the Northern bowl. Northern pho, beef cuts are the king and the only way to get your order. Different cut and different doneness. That's it, nothing more. Southern pho, beef cuts are part of the game. Other options are available such as tendons, beef balls. Northern pho noodles are flat, fresh, wide cut. Southern pho noodles are smaller, thinner, and similar to hủ tiếu noodles. Northern pho condiments are fresh cut chili peppers, garlic vinegar, and limes. Southern pho condiments are hoisin sauce, hot sauce, chili peppers, jalapenos, and lime. Northern pho add-ons are typically guay, pho dough, or eggs. Southern pho add-ons are typically veggies and herbs and bean sprouts. So now you have somewhat of the understanding of the differences and what to look out for. Here are my top 10 bowls of pho as of 2025.